Hello, Patreons. Welcome back to Secret Friends Unite Patreon program Spotlight, where we talk to creators and artists and all kinds of folks in the genre space. We are joined this session by Michael Jan Freeman, a fantastic author in not only the Star Trek space, but in really science fiction and prose in general. Mr. Freeman, it is a pleasure to meet you.
Same here. Good to see you guys.
All right. And of course, I'm joined by Peter Stein, who is my regular Star Trek co-host over on Code 47. Let's jump right on into it. I get the feeling, Mr. Friedman, that you are probably a lifer when it comes to Star Trek as far as being a fan. But tell me how you got your start. How did you first discover the wonder of, Gene Roddenberry's vision?
Well, I think I was 11 years old, and I was watching my little black and white television, and this show came on, and it was it was exactly what I would have done if I could have designed a science fiction TV show. It just captured my imagination. I said, "This is amazing. It's live action, but it's got all the science fiction trappings that I would look for, and I was hooked. And I from that moment on, I watched the entire original series as it came out, week by week, missing not a single episode.
Oh, man.
Nice.
Awesome. Fantastic.
That's awesome. Which episode? Do you remember which episode was that first one? Or
The first one was the Man Trap.
Oh,
Yep,
okay.
was the
So
first
you were
one I
like,
heard, so,
you're
wow,
yeah, September 8,
from the beginning.
1966. That was you, huh?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It
That's
was
cool.
incredible. It was again. It was exactly what I would have done if I knew that it was possible to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
awesome.
Good deal. Cool.
Uh, so about writing a little bit, you've done a lot of writing in Star Trek, obviously, and when it comes to like writing in like an established franchise, you're dealing with characters that like already exist. We know their characterizations. You have like all of us fans out in the ether who have all of our different ideas about how these characters would act when they're not on screen. Um, so how do you go about like getting into their heads to try to bring them to life, to make them feel kind of like how they are or how you think they would be?
Well, um, really, the secret is every writer really writes for his or herself, and you're successful to the extent that your tastes jibe with the tastes of the audience, right? You could be
Right.
writing something great, but if it's not what the audience wants, it's not going to go over too well. But you can't really sit there and say what would the audience like to see in this chapter,
Yeah.
and it's even worse when you ask the audience,
Oh yeah.
because
Bet.
Yeah.
the audience first of all, I think a reading audience actually has a talent,
Hmm.
the ability to take those words and construct a reality and dramatic situations based on those words. That is a talent.
Mhm.
But when you ask what would you like to see, it's seldom the kind of thing that would wind up actually being what they want to see.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Gotcha. Crazy.
Makes sense.
So thinking about comic books, I am a dyed in the wool Marvel Comics guy, and I know you mostly wrote for DC, but you did write that Planet X novel with the T. It was the TNG cast and the X Men, which I'm a big Spider Man guy, but still everybody in the '90s loved the X Men. But when I was a teen in the '90s, uh, I was a huge fan of the original series, DC series that was going on. The only DC series I read really to this day that I paid attention to. But you wrote the TNG series. You started it, and it was in I'm going to say 1988. So like maybe about season 2 of TNG, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's sense.
Um, and you wrote, I mean, I was looking through the total bibliography of it. You wrote of, there were probably 75, 80 issues of that. You probably looked like you wrote kind of the bulk of it, if I'm not mistaken, if not all of it.
I think out of the 80 issues, I think I wrote all but three.
Wow. So that was your baby. Wow.
Oh
And
yeah.
there was a lot of great, I mean, you did certainly what I saw over in the TOS series where a lot of them were like follow-ups, like the Outrageous Okana comes back or Ardra comes back. I loved the Worst of Both Worlds crossover. That was one that I definitely tuned into. Love that, what if we lost to the Borg and kind of that stripe of it. But you wrote, and I could be mistaken, but I think the first ever large scale crossover between the original series and TNG, that Modala Imperative. That was a great little miniseries. How did that come about?
Well, we were at Pocket Books, and among the novelists associated with Pocket Books, we were always looking for opportunities to cross over. And
Right.
at that point, we'd already seen McCoy in the Next Generation, and we'd seen Spock in the Next Generation. I guess just those two at that
Hmm.
point. And we said, well, you've already established this. Now it's just a question of our embellishing. And so a Modala Imperative was actually 8 issues. There were four in the original series context,
Right. Right. Right.
four in the
Right.
Next Generation.
That's
And
right.
the Next Generation issues featured Scotty and Spock because they were dealing with a situation that began in the original series.
Right. Right, right. I'll have to dust that one off. It's funny with these older comics because they're tough to track down. They don't really
Mhm.
exist online. You've got to dig through those dollar bins. And it's funny because I'm largely in this day and age a digital comics reader, but the comics that I do own and they're in little short boxes in the closet in my bedroom are just out of print stuff, and a whole bin of them is DC Star Trek. So definitely a lot of your stuff because you really can't track it down very easily. It's not available for digital purchase, so it's old school, which is great. I love it. I'll still pull those out from time to time and get them out of the bags and boards and read them and stuff. Wear my glasses, look up tight because you can't zoom in.
Yeah, yeah. Later on, and again, we were always looking for ways to cross over. Later
Yeah,
on, Howard Weinstein and I did a crossover with the annuals,
yeah,
the DC annuals, whereby the original series crew and the Next Generation crew actually shared a story, actually met, but they couldn't see each other.
right. I remember
Mm.
this
So
now. Yeah,
they were able to coexist in this story, but they couldn't actually see each other. And
right.
then in a novel called Crossover,
Hmm.
Yeah,
the
that's on
Fox,
my shelf.
is that coming up? Is that
No,
Yeah,
I'm
one?
just saying it's right over there.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
yeah,
So Crossover, we by then Scotty had also been introduced in the Next Generation, so we were able to cross over with Spock, McCoy, and Scotty in that
yeah,
in that
yeah.
generation novel.
Excellent. Good deal. All right, Peter.
Yeah, I found the crossover novel, and I was on a spat of looking at um, different novels that brought the different crews together. One of the ones I found was, I don't know if you're familiar with it, Federation,
Sure.
which is like sort of an idea before Generation.
Yeah,
So that just reminded me of that, where they couldn't see, they kind of saw each other. They were in a black hole. But
Hmm.
right.
anyway, um, kind of related to that, Star Trek book canon, at least amongst the fans, has always been considered a little loose, kind of a little bit looser than, say, the Star Wars, the old expanded universe. What do you think about that particular statement of the canon being loose? And did you ever like collaborate with any of the other authors who worked on the pocketbooks Star Trek novels, or any of the other ones, or did you guys just kind of keep them fairly episodic and not really interrelated?
Well, I'm not sure I would use the word loose. I think I think I might even say it was a tight continuity. in that you had to very, very um, strictly observe certain parameters,
Hmm.
right? In the and with one exception, the books were never acknowledged by the screen products.
Yep.
Right.
So there was an exception in uh, the editor at Pocket Books was talking to Jerry Taylor, who
Hmm.
actually passed away recently. She was a
Right.
wonderful, wonderful woman, wonderful producer. She was producing Voyager at the time, and they were talking, and she said, "So what's going on?" And John Ordover, the editor, said, "Well, you know, we're going to do a stunt called Day of Honor. There's going to be and he had done this before. There's going to be a Next Generation book, and an original series, and a Voyager, and a
Yeah, I've
DS9
read
book."
that.
And she said, "Wow, Day of Honor! That's the Klingon Day of Honor. What a cool idea!" And she ended up creating an episode called
Right.
Day of
Yeah, I
Honor,
remember.
right?
It's
Which
a
is
great one.
based on the idea that John came up with for the books. We then adapted the Day of Honor episode as a novel
Hmm.
and collected all 5 books under a single cover. So
That's cool.
yeah, yeah. So it was cool. I did the adaptation.
Right.
Um,
I remember that. I slammed through all those. There were a lot of, and I mentioned this a little bit later on in my questions, but I spent a lot of lonely high school nights because I I was a lonely kid who loved Star Trek, reading those pocket books. So yeah, it's a fairly big part of my growing up. But speaking of Voyager, glad you brought it up. You wrote an episode in season 2 of Voyager called Resistance, which had this
right,
great breakout performance from Broadway legend Joel Grey. A very memorable one for us. Peter and I on the Star Trek show that we do, we go through the legacy content and talk about it. We've long since passed. We're almost done with all the series, but we've done Voyager season 2 quite a while back. But that was an incredible episode. Any particular memory kind of stretch out to you from doing that? Were you on set, or did you write and hand it off, or what was that like for you?
well, first of all, we pitched to Jerry Taylor, and she and we had pitched to the Next Generation a few times and to Deep Space Nine, and now we were pitching to Voyager, and typically we would pitch 6 episodes, 6 ideas, and
Mhm.
we would get in 4 cases we would say they would say great idea, already doing it,
No,
and then
great.
once they would say, yeah, that's a really great idea, can't do it, can't tell you why. And
No,
then
no.
and then usually there was one that where they would say, "No, that one just sucks." But 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 in this case, we went through a couple, and then we said, because the Kazon were the big
Mhm.
uh,
Hmm.
bad guys at that point. We said, and you want to go for a high concept, right?
Hmm.
So you want to be able to pitch in terms of something else that they've seen. So we said, Janeway plays Dulcinea to a Kazon Don Quixote.
Oh my.
And
Holy
and
cow.
Jerry said, "Wow, I like that. I like that. I really like that. Let me pitch that to the rest of the staff, and I'll get back to you tomorrow." So we were in heaven. Like, this is the closest we had come to actually selling something. And but we were nervous. We were nervous because it could fall by the wayside. So we spoke to Jerry the next day in the afternoon, and she said, "I got to tell you," she said, "we're going to buy your idea." Wait, what?
Whoa.
You know, we're going to buy your idea. So we were thrilled. She goes, "But I have to say, we got another pitch this morning, substantially the same pitch, and based on Don Quixote. And if you had pitched right now instead of 24 hours ago, we would have had to buy the other pitch." That's how many they were listening to a thousand outside pitches a year
Man. Oh
and
my gosh.
accepting like 3 of them. So that's how close we came to not getting it done. but once that ball started rolling, it was great. You know how you hear stories about, oh, they I gave them my baby and they mangled it and ran it over with a truck, and I'll never, oh, Hollywood, terrible, and I'll never do that again. But this was just the opposite. They were inclusive, they were transparent, they were respectful, they were great. And every time there was another iteration of the script, they sent us a copy. So it was really, really a great experience. And I attribute that to Jerry. She was wonderful.
Yeah.
And
I did have the opportunity summer of last year to visit Bloomington on the way back from Star Trek Las Vegas, her hometown, where they now have the Catherine Janeway bust in the little garden there, and that was pretty special, I thought.
that's cool. Yeah, I'd like to do that one time. Anyway, it was a great experience. If anything, they improved it. And
Hmm.
the only thing was, when they were casting, we had, like, Brian Dennehy in mind. We had a big, gruff guy in mind, and they cast Joel Grey, and it
Right.
was like,
Polar opposite.
I don't
Not
I
quite.
don't know if that's gonna work, but it did. He was
Right.
he was incredible. He was
Agreed.
incredible. The pathos in that episode it was just dripping with it, and it was a great, it was a great performance.
Hey, Secret Friends Unite, let me tell you about Zencaster. We use them for our show, and now they're supporting us. Zencaster is now the all in one solution making podcasting easy. It's the ultimate web based podcasting solution, provides high quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio quality content, all from one dashboard. Being a creator has never been easier. And we chose Zencaster because of the ease of use, high quality output, and it makes it super easy for our guests to come on. We had multiple solutions we tried before, and Zencaster has just been the best fit for us. Why Zencaster? It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sounds and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. Have you ever worried what you sound like? Zencaster's post production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with the click of a button. So, if you're interested in making an easy, high quality podcast just with the click of a browser button, go to zencaster.com/pricing and use my code SFU1. You'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. Now back to the show.
Yeah, I will have to.
So
I will have to go back and give it a rewatch because it's been a while. But yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, so
Nice.
we really, Kevin Ryan was my writing partner at the time, and we were thrilled with that experience.
Excellent.
Were you guys able to be anywhere on set when they were filming it,
They
or did you
invite
just have to wait till the end?
No, they invited us to watch the taping, but the problem is, you know, I've seen a bunch of tapings, and it's not as exciting as it sounds. So what we would do is, and once you're in there, you're stuck. Take 22. Oh, what? We did get a tour of all the sets. That was great. Um, and we did meet a couple of the actors, but no, I wasn't really eager to make the trip to California. I live in New York, and
Right.
That's fair.
and do that. But
Yeah.
it was, so they invited us, but we declined.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I would imagine that it's a long day to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah. It's anyway. But it
Yeah.
was good. I mean, we got all the benefits. We got the set tour, and we
Mhm.
got to meet some of the actors, and
Mhm.
and uh, and that was just as good.
Cool.
Awesome. Gotcha. Peter.
Um, so I was going over your bibliography a bit, and a bunch of them I've read, and something I was noticing was like you've written across like pretty much all of the eras of Star Trek and touched like almost every single character.
Mm.
Um, like you were even writing in the Starfleet Academy novels. I remember the
Right.
ones for kids. I remember those growing up.
Mhm.
First time I saw the Daedalus class was in, I think it was the Picard one about the Kobayashi Maru. Uh, so
Oh,
because there was a
well,
whole stretch where I think a bunch of characters had the test or something. I don't remember. I just remember the cover. Um,
there, there
but
was a there was a book called Starfleet Year One,
yeah,
which
Yeah.
that one was there too.
was
Yeah,
Daedalus class.
yeah, I remember that one too. But since you've touched like all of these eras and all of these characters, are there any eras that or characters that you haven't written about? Maybe they're not seen on screen yet, or just you haven't dealt with them. Is there anyone that you would like to write about or deal with at some point?
I think I would like to write Strange New Worlds.
Oh yeah.
That would
We're
be
big
that
fans.
would be a lot of fun. I think I'd also like to write Lower Decks. I actually do write humor. Not I have well, I mean, one time I did for Star Trek. I wrote a little with Bob Greenberger, my friend. I wrote a little factoid book called Q's Guide to the Continuum.
Oh,
Oh
I've
no.
seen it. Yeah.
And so I do write humor, and I do write some humorous short stories for different publications. But so I think Lower Decks would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if I had to really make a choice, I think I'd write a Strange New Worlds novel.
Right.
I think they just hit it right. They
Everything
hit a
everything
chord.
really does work on that show, I tell you. Okay, so looking over your birth of work in Star Trek, so many novels. As I said, so many of those were companions for me and my lonely growing up in the in high school in the 90s. What is, of all those publications, I suppose this is like picking your favorite child. What
Right.
is a particular series, because you did great series like the Stargazer, and then you participated in like the captain's table series of books. What's a particular book, series, maybe moment, even maybe an original character that you're like, oh, I'm very, very proud of that, I loved doing that?
Well, um, I would say, let's see. I mean, possibly my favorite Star Trek book was my first Star Trek book, Double Double, which was
Hmm.
based on an episode called "What Are Little Girls Made Of?" An original
Oh yeah.
series episode, and that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. It was cool for one thing because it was the first Star Trek novel I did, um, and 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 it was all that pent up stuff in my head that I was able to use in that
Release it.
novel. Um, so that was a lot of fun. Starfleet Year One,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
was the one that had the Daedalus at the center of it, and that was a lot of fun. It started out as a serial, um, uh, over 12 months, that appeared in the backs of the other books, the other pocket books that came
I
out at the
remember.
time.
I remember that now.
And we
Yeah.
put in a little more material, and we made it a novel, and that was great. The problem was, and we were going to make it Starfleet Year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. It's going to be a 7 book set. And then, we heard, well, Enterprise is going to be the 5th series, but we didn't know anything about it. So I'm sitting at a bat mitzvah, with next to Rick Berman's sister,
Oh my gosh.
and who I knew through my friend who worked for her husband. So it's just a coincidence that I knew her. And so we're sitting at this party, and I said, Judy, throw me a bone. Do you know anything about this fifth series? And Starfleet Year One took place 200 years before Kirk. And she said, she looked around, she goes, think 200 years before Kirk. And I was like, no,
Oh no.
no, no,
Like
no,
I
no,
am.
no, no. I'm doing
Yeah.
that. I'm doing that. No, don't
Yeah.
tell me
Right.
that. And sure enough, they did. So we were in the process of putting this book together to publish it, and they said at Paramount, they said, no, you can't, because it's going to get people all confused.
Right.
And we negotiated
Yeah.
back and forth. There's a disclaimer in Starfleet Year One that says this is not to be confused with the events in Enterprise, which actually I thought was something that would help sales.
Right.
Right. So not Enterprise, good. But they wouldn't let me do Starfleet Year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, which was a
Oh
shame.
shucks. Yeah. Oh,
Um,
that's too bad.
that was a book. I'm very proud of that book. Actually, it
Yeah.
actually adheres to the continuity, and I think it tells a really good story. Um, and so that was another favorite book.
Yeah.
Nice.
I will. I haven't read it, but based on your recommendation, I will. I will go purchase it and read it. I will. And I'm really, really bad at reading books. I swear, with all of this, because Peter and I produce a lot of podcasts. I'm on several other, and then I have a full time job like anybody else. And so, yeah. But every once in like we interviewed Al Jean,
Audiobooks
who,
are your friend.
yeah, who created The Simpsons, and I promised him I would start watching The Simpsons again, and I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to. And yes, I'll get an audiobook or all my long car trips, and I'll get that one for you. It'll put some money in your pocket, so I'd be glad to do
Yeah.
it. All right, Peter.
Um, so you've written a lot of other things. So some of us are really only familiar with your work on Star Trek. Is there what other novels or other things that you've written would you recommend to anyone else who enjoyed your writing and wants to see other stuff that you've written?
Mm. Well, I mean, I've written superhero novels, Lois and Clark and Justice League Unlimited, and I've written um, Aliens, Predator, um, Wolfman,
Oh wow.
um,
Oh wow.
Marvel superheroes, the Ultimates. So I've written a bunch of, X Men,
Hmm.
Fantastic Four. I have written a bunch of other things. What I'm doing now and lately is, wait, I'll show you.
I was gonna
Is
say you're jumping right into my last question, so yeah, show us.
okay, all right. This is Empty Space. It's a graphic novel that I did a few years ago, and it has some similarities to Star Trek. And you can see it's just beautifully rendered. I'll show you in a second. And
Oh
the
nice.
Oh, I like it.
yeah, it's so nice. Done by a
Awesome.
Brazilian artist named Caio Cacau.
Oh
And
wow. Who published that?
I did.
Oh,
I
oh, self-published. No,
Yeah, I
awesome.
kickstarted it and raised the money to publish it. So the idea there is that um, these Starfleet type ships are so far out from Earth that they are not able to return on a regular basis to replenish crew, and
Hmm.
crewmen die. And so what they came up with was a way to resurrect their dead crewmen, and they call them empties because they're empty of emotion, and they last like a year, and then they go berserk and they die.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the hero is a guy who's just been resurrected, and so that's Empty Space. And right now, I'm doing a prose sequel to the graphic novel, which has a
Oh,
whole
terrific.
set of challenges, as you can imagine.
Right.
I kickstarted that as well, so that'll be out in June or July.
Oh,
It's called
great.
the Empty Space Betrayal.
Gotcha.
So,
We'll have to get some links so we can help publicize that for you. So where would people find that?
well, Empty Space is not currently available on the internet, but it will be,
Okay.
and graphic novel isn't, and they can. It'll be a reward in future Kickstarters because I do
Okay.
one a couple times a year. I do a Kickstarter, and so that'll be a reward there, as will the novel, which will come out in June or
Great.
July.
Very
Very
good.
cool.
That's terrific. Well, yeah, you wrapped that up pretty succinctly because I would say, what are you doing? But what are you up to? But that sounds incredible. I would love to get my hands on that. So that's good.
So, thank you.
We will definitely keep our eyes out for it. So this has been absolutely incredible. It's been wonderful talking to you. Longtime fan of everything you did. I will start digging the dollar bins for your old issues of the Next Generation. I know that that money doesn't go into your pocket, but I would love to read a little bit more because, like I said, I was so
Sure.
hyper focused on that old TOS series because I really love because I love it was the TOS movies that really got me into Star Trek in the 80s.
Well,
But the TNG, it took me a little bit longer to kind of get into the show, though. Ultimately, I became such a huge fan. So, but this has been
Can I
wonderful.
can I plug something?
Absolutely.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Oh yeah, where else can people find you?
Okay, well, they can find me. Here we go. They can find me at crazy8press.com. So
All right,
this is our logo down here. You see that C and an
Crazy
8,
Eight.
right? So that's
Nice.
Crazy 8 Press. At Crazy 8 Press, I and 10 other established writers, we got together to publish as a group. And we pretty much only publish our stuff, but we work together to promote it and fill in whatever expertise we need in order to do that. This is one of the books I've published with Crazy Eight. It's called Astlon. It's a 21st century Aztec Empire noir murder mystery.
Ooh,
Ooh.
that sounds awesome.
So it's a
My
mouthful, but
goodness.
but it's a cool book.
Right.
But the idea at Crazy Eight is that we're working on our most heartfelt visions without any restrictions in terms of working with a publisher. So
Right.
so inevitably you get our best work.
Right. Oh, that's
And at
terrific.
crazy8press.com we have about 80 books in inventory, and not just mine, but those of other terrific writers. So I
Gotcha.
encourage your
Good.
viewers to check it out.
We will shout it to the rooftop. So again, thank you so much for your time. This has been terrific. Um, uh, this will go out on our Patreon. It'll later be out on our free feed for all of our listeners and viewers. So to our great Patreons, thank you for tuning in. If you're not one of our Patreons and you are listening to this on our free feed, you can visit patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite. Try us out for 7 days for free and stay on board for as little as $2 a month and get great interviews like this wonderful one that we've had with Michael Jan Freeman. I'll bid you adieu, sir. Thank you again, and we will see you out there. Live long and prosper.
Great talking to you guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.